Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You are afraid of death because you are afraid of life unlived. The wrinkles you fear are merely time's honest record of a soul's journey." Lao Tzu would observe, "The hard and rigid will be broken, the soft and fluid will prevail. Those who cling to youth become brittle, those who flow with time remain supple." Imagine standing before your bathroom mirror one morning, and instead of searching for signs of aging, you suddenly see something else entirely, a face that seems somehow untouched by the weight most people carry. Not younger in the way advertisements promise, something deeper. Your colleague mentions it casually. You haven't aged a day. Your old friend studies your face with genuine curiosity. What's your secret? But here's what stops you cold. You've done nothing. No elaborate routines, no expensive interventions, no militant discipline against the passage of time. And yet somehow, while others around you seem to carry their years like visible burdens, you appear to move through time differently. This creates an unsettling question, one that the ancient Stoics and Eastern sages both circled around, though from different paths. What if the very act of fighting against age is what ages us most? Consider this paradox that Epictetus might have posed to his students in that humble school in Nicopolis. We are terrified of appearing old, so we wage war against time itself. We scrutinize every line, every gray hair, every sign that we are not eternal. We invest enormous energy into controlling something that exists entirely outside our control. And in that desperate grasping, in that constant tension between what we are and what we wish to appear, we create the very thing we fear most, a face marked not by years but by resistance to them. The Taoists understood this from a different angle. Lao Tzu wrote of the infant's soft bones and supple flesh, how weakness contains strength, how yielding endures while rigidity breaks. A tree that cannot bend in the wind will snap, water that cannot be grasped cannot be captured, and a person who refuses to age gracefully becomes rigid with that refusal, and rigidity, whether in body or spirit, is aging's truest signature. You've likely noticed this in people you know. Not their literal age, but something else, a quality of presence. Some people at 60 possess a lightness, a fluidity in their features that has nothing to do with genetics or expensive creams. Others at 30 already carry a heaviness, a hardness around the eyes, a tension in the jaw that speaks of constant internal warfare. They are fighting a battle they've already lost before it began, because the battle itself is the aging. But what if you've stumbled upon something accidentally? What if in some small ways you haven't fully recognized you've been living according to principles that Marcus Aurelius meditated upon in his tent between battles, or that Zhuangzi illustrated through his strange stories of useless trees that lived for centuries precisely because no one tried to cut them down? What if looking younger than your age has almost nothing to do with what you put on your face, and everything to do with how you hold your relationship with mortality itself? This isn't another promise of eternal youth. The Stoics would call that a preferred indifferent, nice to have but irrelevant to the good life. The Taoists would call it swimming against the current, exhausting and ultimately futile. No, this is something more subversive, the possibility that the people who age most slowly are precisely those who have stopped trying to stop it, that youthfulness isn't captured but released, that it appears not in those who grasp for it, but in those who've learned to let time flow through them without resistance. Seneca wrote to his friend Lucilius, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." Could the same be true of aging? That we don't age because of time's passage, but because of how we resist that passage, because of the stories we tell ourselves about what each year means, because of the death grip we maintain on an image of ourselves that was never meant to be permanent. There are hidden reasons why some faces remain somehow untouched while others are carved deep with worry. But these reasons have nothing to do with products, procedures, or the endless battlefield of anti-aging warfare. They have everything to do with something the ancients knew, something that exists in the space between Stoic acceptance and Taoist flow, a way of being with time that transforms our relationship to our own reflection. What are these hidden reasons, and why do they work precisely because we're not trying to make them work? The ancient mirror, the answer begins not in modern neuroscience or dermatology, but in something Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself nearly 2,000 years ago, never intending anyone else to read it. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. He was writing about far more than aging, of course. He was writing about the fundamental human condition, but hidden within that simple observation lies the first hidden reason why some people seem untouched by time. Every moment you spend anxious about aging, your body responds as if to a threat. Your cortisol rises, your muscles tense, your face arranges itself into patterns of worry that, repeated thousands of times, become the very lines you feared. The Stoics called this assenting to impressions, the moment when an external fact, time passing, becomes an internal catastrophe. I am losing value. I am becoming irrelevant. I am approaching death. Between the fact and the catastrophe lies a space, and in that space some people have learned to pause. Epictetus, who spent years as a slave before becoming one of history's most influential philosophers, taught his students to distinguish between what is up to us and what is not. Your chronological age, not up to you. The biological processes of cellular aging, not up to you. But your judgment about what these things mean, entirely up to you. And here's what almost no one realizes. Your face is listening to your judgments, every day, every hour, the micro-expressions of anxiety, the subtle tightening when you catch your reflection, the fleeting grimace when someone mentions your age. These are not neutral, they are carving you. The first hidden reason, then, is this. You have released the judgment that aging is catastrophic, not through forced positive thinking, but through genuine philosophical realization that your worth was never contained in your appearance's ability to stop time. Now turn eastward, to a teaching that seems to contradict the Stoic approach but actually completes it. Lao Tzu writes in the Tao Te Ching, "The soft overcomes the hard, the gentle overcomes the rigid." Everyone knows this, yet no one applies it. He was observing nature, how water erodes stone, how bamboo bends in storms that snap oak trees, how infant bones heal faster than elderly ones precisely because they're more flexible. But he was also observing human nature. Watch someone who is desperately trying to look young. Notice the rigidity, the forced smile that doesn't reach the eyes, the careful posing, the constant self-monitoring. They have become hard, inflexible, brittle in their attempt to preserve, and brittleness, whether in bone or spirit, is aging's signature. Contrast this with someone who moves through the world with genuine ease, not carelessness, ease. Their expressions flow naturally. They laugh fully, which means their face creases when they do, and then releases when the laughter passes. They don't hold their face in constant performance. They are like water, taking the shape of each moment and then releasing it. And paradoxically, this constant movement, this refusal to freeze themselves in performative youth, keeps them vital. The second hidden reason, you have maintained psychological flexibility, the emotional and mental suppleness that prevents your face from hardening into defensive patterns. In the 3rd century BCE, Zhuangzi told a story about a gnarled, twisted tree that lived for centuries, while all the straight, beautiful trees around it were cut down for timber. The useless tree was preserved by its very uselessness. There's a teaching here that cuts against everything modern culture tells us about aging. Those who make themselves useful through their appearance become consumed by that usefulness. They become timber, resources to be evaluated, compared, harvested, discarded when no longer optimal. But what if you've unconsciously opted out of this evaluation? What if some part of you has decided that your face is not timber to be appraised, but simply the way your life happens to show itself? This doesn't mean neglect. The useless tree still grows, still responds to seasons, still lives fully. It simply refuses to define its worth by its use value to others. The third hidden reason emerges. You have disconnected your sense of identity from the market value of your appearance. You are not performing youth because you are not performing at all. Your face is not a product, not a project, not a battlefield. It is simply where you live. Seneca, in his letters on ethics, returns again and again to a theme that seems morbid to modern ears but was liberating to the Romans. Memento mori, remember you must die. He writes, "Let us prepare our minds as if we'd come to the very end of life. Let us postpone nothing. Let us balance life's books each day. The one who puts the finishing touches on their life each day is never short of time." This seems unrelated to looking young until you understand what Seneca meant. Most people age rapidly, not because of biology, but because they are constantly postponing life. They are waiting for the right moment, the right body, the right circumstances. And waiting creates a particular kind of facial tension, a held breath that never releases, an expression that says not yet, not now, not me. But someone who has genuinely internalized their mortality in the Stoic sense doesn't wait. They don't postpone living until they've perfected their appearance. They are here, now, fully inhabited in this moment, this body, this face. And that full inhabitation creates a paradoxical effect. They seem more alive, more present, more vital, which the human eye reads as younger, though what we're actually perceiving is someone who hasn't postponed their existence. The fourth hidden reason, you have achieved a degree of presence, full inhabitation of your current moment and body, that others read as vitality. Confucius taught that superior people harmonize but do not conform. They move within their culture without being possessed by its anxieties. This might be the most hidden reason of all, and the one that most directly creates the younger than your age effect. The unseen consequences. Here is what most people don't see. The face you wear is not just reflecting your years, it's reflecting your relationship with every moment you've lived. And this distinction changes everything. Consider two people, both 45 years old. One has spent 2 decades in subtle warfare with their reflection. Each morning brings inventory, new lines assessed, damage catalogued, strategies deployed. The other has lived those same years with what Zen practitioners might call mirror mind, seeing clearly without judgment, without the commentary that turns observation into suffering. Their faces have processed for the same amount of time, but they have not processed the same amount of resistance. The Stoics understood that suffering comes not from circumstances, but from our judgments about circumstances. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." Apply this to aging, and you uncover a mechanism so subtle that most people live their entire lives without seeing it operate. Every time you judge your aging as terrible, your nervous system responds to that judgment as a genuine threat. Your body doesn't distinguish between "I'm being chased by a predator" and "I'm becoming unattractive." Both trigger the same ancient alarm systems. Cortisol floods your bloodstream, inflammation increases, cellular repair slows. Your fascia, the connective tissue throughout your body, tenses and eventually shortens, pulling your features downward. You are literally sculpting your face with your judgments, hour by hour, year by year. But the consequences run deeper than biology. There's a cognitive trap that Western psychology calls confirmation bias, and that Buddhist philosophy addresses through the teaching of Sankhara, mental formations that condition how we perceive reality. Once you believe you are aging poorly, you begin collecting evidence. You notice every photograph where the lighting is unflattering. You compare yourself to airbrushed images. You interpret neutral comments as veiled criticism. And in this evidence gathering, you create a feedback loop. Your anxiety about looking old makes you look anxious, and anxiety ages the face faster than almost anything else. Lao Tzu observed, "When I let go of what I am, I become what I might be." Most people read this as mystical poetry, but it's precise psychological instruction. The person who clings desperately to "I am young" or "I was beautiful" becomes trapped in that clinging. Their face arranges itself around the preservation of a past self. They become archaeological sites of former identities, every feature held rigid in defense of what no longer exists. Watch someone in this trap. Their smile is careful. Too much joy creates creases. Their expressions are monitored. Surprise creates forehead lines. They have trained themselves into a kind of emotional flatness, believing this will keep them smooth. But the human face evolved to be expressive, and an unexpressive face registers as unnatural, uncanny, somehow wrong in ways we perceive but cannot name. We call it looking older, when what we actually mean is looking defended, looking afraid, looking half alive. The fifth hidden reason crystallizes here. You have maintained full emotional expressiveness, the unrestricted movement between states that keeps the face animated rather than frozen. The Taoist concept of Wu Wei, effortless action, non-forcing, illuminates another consequence. When you try to force your face to remain young, you create exactly the tension that aging loves. It's like trying to force a river to stop flowing, or trying to grasp water in your fist. The harder you squeeze, the faster it escapes. The more you force your face into youth, the more you transmit the energy of forcing, and forcing always shows. There's a particular exhaustion that appears in people who have spent years at war with time. It's visible around the eyes, especially a fatigue that has nothing to do with sleep and everything to do with the endless vigilance of self-monitoring. They are tired not from living, but from the constant effort of appearing. And this exhaustion accumulates in the tissue itself, creating what we perceive as looking worn, or looking older than their years. Compare this to someone who has genuinely released that vigilance, not through surrender into neglect, but through what the Stoics called apatheia, freedom from destructive passions. They care for themselves without being enslaved to outcomes. They move through their days without the background drain of appearance anxiety. And that freed energy, it shows. It shows as vitality, as presence, as the subtle radiance that has nothing to do with skincare and everything to do with not hemorrhaging life force into futile resistance. Epictetus taught his students, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Every person ages, every face changes. These are the facts, the uncontrollable externals, but between the fact of aging and your experience of it lies an entire universe of choice. You can meet each change with horror and resistance, turning aging into a prolonged catastrophe, or you can meet it with what the Buddhists call equanimity, clear-seeing acceptance that neither clings nor rejects. And here's the quiet revolution that almost no one discusses. When you stop resisting aging, something unexpected happens. You don't suddenly look ancient. Instead, you often look younger, because you've removed the single thing that was aging you fastest, the resistance itself. The tension releases, the constant micro-expressions of anxiety smooth out, The energetic quality of warfare disappears from your presence. Zhuangzi tells of the butcher whose blade stayed sharp for 19 years because he cut along the natural grain of the meat, finding the spaces between joints rather than hacking through bone. This is Wu Wei in action, working with reality's nature rather than against it. Applied to aging, it means moving with time rather than against it, which paradoxically preserves you far better than any amount of force. The consequence that remains hidden to most, those who age most gracefully, are those who have stopped treating aging as an enemy to be defeated. They have found the spaces between the joints, they move with time's blade rather than beneath it, and in that movement they remain somehow fluid, alive, untouched by the brittleness that comes from years of interior warfare. But knowing these consequences is not the same as embodying the wisdom that prevents them, and that embodiment, that lived practice, requires something more radical than most people imagine. How to break free. The path forward is not what you think. It's not another routine, not another discipline to master, not another battle to win against your reflection. The rebellion against aging through anxiety requires something far more subversive, the courage to stop rebelling altogether. This sounds like surrender. The Stoics and Taoists both knew it was the opposite. Begin here, with a practice Epictetus would have recognized immediately, the discipline of ascent. Every morning you catch your reflection, and a thought arises. I look tired, or that line wasn't there before, or I'm starting to look old. In that microsecond between the thought arising and your belief in it, there exists a space. Epictetus taught that we are not disturbed by things themselves, but by our views of things. The wrinkle is neutral. The judgment about the wrinkle creates the suffering, and the suffering creates the tension that carves more wrinkles. Your practice, notice the judgment, don't fight it. Fighting a judgment is still giving it power. Observe it as you would observe a cloud passing through the sky. There's the thought that I look old, not I look old, but there's the thought. This small distinction creates enormous freedom. You are not your thoughts about your appearance. You are the awareness that witnesses those thoughts, and awareness doesn't age. Do this 100 times, 1,000 times, until the automatic identification with appearance judgments begins to loosen. You will notice something remarkable. Your face in the mirror begins to look different, not because it has changed, but because you've stopped layering it with catastrophic interpretation. You're seeing your face rather than your fear about your face. Now add the Taoist complement to this Stoic foundation. The principle of Wu Wei, effortless action, applies not just to grand philosophical questions, but to the small movements of your daily life. Watch how you hold your face throughout the day. Are you performing? Are you arranging your features into what you think youth should look like? Are you smiling with your mouth but holding your eyes still to prevent creases? Are you restricting your expressions to minimize movement? This performative holding creates exactly the rigidity that ages. Your rebellion is this. Move your face. Laugh fully, even though it creates lines. Show surprise, even though your forehead creases. Express sadness when it's present, anger when it's appropriate, joy when it arrives. Your face is not a mask to be maintained. It is the living surface of your inner world, and a living surface that moves naturally stays supple in ways that a frozen mask never can. Marcus Aurelius, who bore the weight of empire on his shoulders, wrote himself this reminder: confine yourself to the present, not as a meditation technique, but as a practical instruction for sanity. Every moment you spend worried about how you'll look in 10 years is a moment you're not actually living, and not living shows on your face far more than living does. Your practice. Catch yourself when you drift into anxious futures or regretful pasts about your appearance. Physically bring your attention back to this moment. What are you doing right now? If you're having coffee with a friend, are you actually present with them, or are you partially elsewhere, monitoring your appearance, wondering how you're being perceived? That split attention, that partial presence, creates a particular quality of absence in the eyes that people read unconsciously but accurately as aging. Full presence is rejuvenating, not because of any mystical property, but because presence means your energy is not hemorrhaging into anxiety about the past or the future. You are here now, wholly, and wholeness radiates. Consider the example of the Japanese Zen master Shunryu Suzuki, who taught in San Francisco until his death at 67. Photographs show a face deeply lined, weathered by decades of intense meditation practice. Yet everyone who met him remarked on his youthfulness, not despite the lines but somehow through them. He had achieved what Zen calls beginner's mind, approaching each moment fresh, without the accumulated weight of fixed identity. His face showed his years, but his presence transmitted something ageless. He had become like water, taking the shape of each moment, then releasing it completely. You don't need to become a Zen master, but you can adopt this practice. At the end of each day, consciously let that day go. Release your grip on who you were today, what you looked like today, what happened today. The Stoics called this the evening review, but with a twist. You're not just reviewing your actions, you're releasing your attachment to the self who performed them. Tomorrow you wake as someone new, not because you've aged overnight, but because you've refused to carry yesterday's identity into today. This is profoundly counterintuitive. We're taught that maintaining a consistent identity is maturity, but the Buddhists understood that clinging to fixed identity is suffering. And nowhere is this clearer than in appearance. The person who desperately clings to "I am young" or "I am beautiful" must constantly defend that identity against reality's erosion. The person who releases identity each night wakes unburdened by who they were supposed to be. Seneca offers the final piece of this rebellion. He wrote to Lucilius, "True happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future." Apply this to your appearance. Can you enjoy your face as it is today, right now, without anxious dependence on it remaining this way? Can you appreciate the story your face tells, the laughter lines, the thought furrows, the weather of lived experience, without needing to erase that story? Your most radical practice: stand before your mirror and just once say thank you to your face for carrying you through your life. Not gratitude as a technique for self-acceptance, but genuine recognition. This face has served you. It has allowed you to smile at loved ones, to cry when heartbroken, to show surprise at beauty, and to express the full range of human emotion. It has been your ambassador to the world, and it has never asked for anything except to be allowed to move naturally through time. That recognition, that simple acknowledgement, can dissolve years of warfare in a single moment, not because it makes you look younger, but because it ends the conflict that was aging you from the inside out. The rebellion is complete when you realize you were never fighting time. You were fighting your judgment about time, and that fight was always optional. The ultimate truth, the final, most powerful realization. There is a teaching that appears in both Stoic and Eastern philosophy, expressed differently but pointing to the same profound truth. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The universe is change. Our life is what our thoughts make it." Lao Tzu observed, "Life is a series of natural and spontaneous changes. Don't resist them. That only creates sorrow." Both are circling around something that, once truly grasped, transforms not just how you age, but how you exist. The ultimate realization is this: you were never separate from time. You are not a fixed thing being eroded by time's passage. You are time's expression, time's movement, time itself taking the shape of a human life. Read that again slowly. Let it disturb your certainty about who you are. Most people experience themselves as solid entities being worn down by an external force called aging. This creates the subject-object split that generates all the suffering. Me versus time, my face versus decay, my identity versus change. From this split, warfare becomes inevitable. How can you not fight an external enemy that's destroying who you are? But what if that split is the illusion? What if the Buddhists were right about anatta, no self, not as mystical poetry, but as a precise description of reality? What if the Stoics were right that you are not your body but the reasoning faculty that observes it? What if you are not the face in the mirror but the awareness watching the face, and that awareness is the same awareness that witnesses a child's face and an elder's face with equal presence? From this perspective, aging is not happening to you. Aging is one of the ways you are happening. You are not a noun being modified by time. You are a verb, a process, a continuous becoming. And verbs don't age. They simply continue expressing themselves in different forms. This is not semantic wordplay. This is the difference between prison and freedom. When you identify as a fixed self that's aging, every change is a loss. Every year is theft. Every wrinkle is evidence of your diminishment. The face you see in the mirror is always falling short of the face you should have. And that gap between what is and what should be creates the suffering that literally carves itself into your features. But when you recognize yourself as process rather than product, as flow rather than form, something extraordinary happens. You stop resisting the very movement that constitutes your existence. The river stops fighting its own current. The wave stops trying to preserve itself against the ocean. Heraclitus, the pre-Socratic philosopher who influenced both Stoic and Taoist thought, said, "No man ever steps in the same river twice, for it's not the same river, and he's not the same man." You have never been the same person for 2 consecutive moments. The face you're trying to preserve already died 1 billion times since you last looked at it. Every cell has been replaced, every molecule exchanged, every pattern shifted. What you call your face is actually a river of faces, a continuous flow that you've arbitrarily frozen in your mind and labeled me. And here's the secret the sages knew. When you release that freeze frame and recognize yourself as the flow itself, you begin to move with an entirely different quality. You stop bracing against change. You stop holding yourself in defensive postures. You stop the constant micro-tension of trying to stop what cannot be stopped. And that release, that profound letting go, is what people perceive as youthfulness, not because you look like a younger version of yourself, but because you've recovered the essential quality that actual youth possesses: openness to change, fluidity of form, absence of rigid self-concept. Watch a child. They don't hold their face carefully. They don't monitor their expressions. They don't carry a defensive relationship with their own image. They are too busy being alive to worry about looking alive. And that complete inhabitation of the present moment is what radiates as vitality. You can recover this not by becoming childish, but by releasing the accumulated weight of defended identity. Every time you recognize yourself as a process rather than a product, you drop a little more of that weight. Every time you witness your face without judgment, you're practicing the same freedom a child has, naturally. Every time you allow full expression instead of controlled performance, you're remembering how to flow. The Stoics and Taoists both point to the same liberating truth from different angles. Your peace doesn't come from controlling what cannot be controlled. It comes from recognizing what you actually are, not the changing form, but the unchanging awareness that witnesses all forms. Marcus Aurelius called it the divine reason within. The Buddhists call it Buddha nature. The Taoists see it as alignment with the Tao. The name doesn't matter. What matters is the recognition. You are not your face. You never were. Your face is something you have, temporarily, the way you might hold a water cup in your hands. You can appreciate it, care for it, even delight in it, but you cannot keep it unchanged any more than you can prevent that water from eventually returning to the stream. And the moment you truly realize this, not intellectually but in your bones, the entire game changes. You stop fighting, not because you've given up, but because you've seen through the illusion that there was ever a fight to be fought. Time is not your enemy. Change is not your destroyer. They are the very movements through which life expresses itself as you. The 5 hidden reasons why you look younger than your age all flow from this ultimate realization. You have released, perhaps without even knowing it, some measure of the fiction that you are a fixed self under attack by time. You have allowed life to move through you with less resistance. You have confused the urgent voice of cultural conditioning with truth. And in those moments of release, in those gaps between the defensive thoughts, your original face appears, the face before you were born, as the Zen masters say, the face that cannot age because it was never bound by time. This is not a promise that you'll look 20 forever. This is something far more valuable, the recognition that whether you look 20 or 70, you remain the same unchanging awareness, the same presence, the same fundamental aliveness, and that recognition radiates through whatever face you happen to be wearing today. The wrinkles will come, the changes will continue, time will do what time does, but you, the real you, remain untouched, watching it all with the same awareness that watched your infant face in your mother's arms and will watch your final face on your final day. That awareness has no age, it never did, and the more you rest in it, the more your face reflects not youth, but something youth only temporarily possesses: complete presence, absolute nowness, the vitality of being fully alive in this unrepeatable moment. This is the secret, not a technique, not a routine, not a rebellion against time, but a recognition of what you've always been beneath the costume of any particular age. You are not aging. You are time itself, taking a human shape, dancing briefly in the light, and that dance, when moved without resistance, is the most beautiful thing in the world. So here is your invitation, not to battle but to release. Tomorrow morning, stand before your mirror and simply observe. No judgment, no commentary. Just see the face that has carried you through every moment of your life. Notice when the voice of resistance arises, too old, not enough, fading, and recognize it as just another thought passing through awareness. Then, throughout your day, catch yourself in the act of performing youth. Notice when you freeze your expressions, when you monitor your reflection, when you split your attention between living and appearing. And in those moments, make a different choice. Be here fully. Laugh completely. Express genuinely. Move through your day as if your face were not a project to be managed, but simply the way your aliveness shows itself. This is not about looking younger. This is about remembering what you are beneath the face, the unchanging awareness that witnesses every age with equal presence. Practice this recognition, not once, but again and again, until the war with time finally ends. And watch what happens when you stop fighting the river and become it instead.